Hey guys, it's Cal from the Lighting Doctor here. Sorry, this might be the second chance you're getting at this video. We did try a live stream earlier. We had some audio issues that we didn't know about for a long time, and then the video cut out, which luckily uh, we figured out, and now we know why we had audio issues. So anyway, we're gonna kind of start over again, and this is gonna be the continuation of a live stream. We're gonna try and do this at least every single Wednesday for now. Uh, hey guys, I'm not sure if this started or not. This is our first live stream, so we're having some technical issues. But basically, what this is, we tried this earlier, didn't work out. We're going to be answering all kinds of landscape lighting questions going forward, as well as we're going to show you a bunch of different tools, a bunch of different tips as they come in, so you guys can leave comments and questions and stuff in the live chat, and we can help answer those. You can always email them ahead of time too. You can email them directly to me at cal@lightingdoctor.ca, or we'll attempt to share a screen here. Yeah, you can always go to probably just blacked out. There we go. Yeah, you can always go to our contact page as well, and then you can just leave messages for future episodes. We'll try and answer those questions, as well as one of the other things that we're going to start doing here too is we have our free landscape lighting design consultations, which a lot of you guys have seen and you've taken advantage of. It basically, what it is if you're new to landscape lighting, installing lights is the easy part. We have all kinds of videos. You can always go check out our do-it-yourself videos section. It walks you through how to do that. The toughest part is two things. One, what do you use? Where do you even start sourcing that out? And two is really the design. That takes a lot of times. It takes a lot of years of experience to kind of figure that out. What we've done with our design consultation is basically it gives you a chance to email me. You can email me directly, Cal @lightingdoctor.ca. You can email me a couple pictures of your property, and we'll have a look at it, and we'll get back to you with, it's usually a 3 to 20-minute video, depending on your project, that goes through all the different lights you can use, where you can use them, kind of puts a design specifically for you and your property. Otherwise, you can go to our contact page. You can always reach us here. Leave us a comment. We'll get back to you on how to kind of do that. But we're going to go through some live examples here, so you guys can actually see what you need to send us and what that looks like too, so you can see how beneficial it is. Because one of the things that we find is when people do that, because I get dozens of emails a week, as somebody will say, I need 24 path lights, I need 8 up lights. And I'm like, well, you know what? Send us some pictures first. Let us have a look. If you're totally confident, go for it. But a lot of times we can find a lot of ways where you don't need that many lights. And with landscape lighting, a lot of times less is more. And that's what we kind of want to help you figure out, and then piece all those things together. So in this live stream, in this video, I'm going to kind of talk about what it takes to get started, some of the first things you need to get started with a landscape lighting project. Although we have a lot of that, if you go, we do have kits that you don't really have to worry about all the things you need. A lot of them are already there. If you just kind of go, you'll see we have a bunch of landscape lighting kits that includes everything. But I want to walk you through how we get to that process. So if you don't want to get it from us, that's fine. We just offer premium contractor grade stuff. But I get it. Some people are on a budget. Maybe you're going to buy some stuff from Amazon. Maybe you're going to get it from somewhere else, but at least we can point you in the right direction. And that's what this video is going to be about. And then we'll walk you through a design consultation as well. So I really encourage you guys to take advantage of the consults. It's such a game changer budget wise. I'm not serious. I'm not even joking, guys. I mean, I get 500 to 1,000 of these consults a year that I go through for probably the last 5 to 6 years now, at least. And the amount of money that we're able to save people just by not overdoing it with lights, it makes a huge difference. So, and it looks professional. I'll be honest. Those design consults, a lot of times people send back pictures and their projects look a lot better than a lot of the designers out in my area where I live anyway. Their projects look a lot better than a lot of those because, They don't take the proper time. There's simple things you can do to get there. So yeah. So anyway, I'm going to kind of talk about a couple of things. I mean, when you get started on any landscape lighting project, obviously the first thing you need to know is what type of lights you're going to use and where you're going to use them. That's again why the consult comes in handy. But if not, I mean, 90% of what you guys are going to do, I'm going to be honest with you, is going to be accomplished. 70% is going to be accomplished by some form of an uplight, whether it's just a standard uplight with a 3-watt bulb, whether it has a wide angle bulb and it's a wash light, whether you have tall trees and you have to use something a lot brighter. 70% of your effects are going to come from this one light alone, and this is the most cost-effective way of doing it. The rest is going to come from some path and garden lights. So one thing I will say about path and garden lights, and this is proven time and time again, is people always overdo it with path and garden lights. Unless you're trying to run or land an airplane on your driveway or something like that, most people could probably cut at least their path lighting budget in half by using fewer of them. And that comes with a few caveats. One is a lot of times people will buy cheap solar lights or cheaper lights where you see the light source, you see the light effect, and it's just like a runway on an airstrip where you just see all these bright lights. But with any landscape light, you don't want to see the light. You want to see the effect. So you want to get some kind of fixture that you don't see the light. You're just going to get the effect down below. The second thing that I find that most people do is, one, they overdo it. And the reason for that is because, again, if you're getting a cheaper quality light, something you can find on Amazon. I'm not knocking Amazon. I mean, we get the Amazon truck shows up at our house every 2 days. So there's lots of good stuff on there, but I'm saying it's tough to sort through all that. But a lot of times people will buy a lot of those lights, and they'll always ask me, says, well, if I get something that's got a brighter bulb in it, is that going to make it spread further? Can I get away with fewer of them? And that's not usually the case, because when you do that, what happens with a brighter bulb shining down is it usually just leaves a bigger hot spot on the actual ground, as opposed to actually spreading that light further. What actually determines that is the height of the light. That's why a good premium light is probably going to be about 22 to 24 inches high. And then what that does is it really spreads that light. You can usually spread that light anywhere from 8 to 16 feet, depending on how dark it is. The darker the area, the further you can space those lights out. So that's actually something that's really important when doing path lights is get something that's a little bit higher. Another kind of helpful tip for that is, a lot of times when people are doing path lights, is they'll do like a walkway, and they just put the lights kind of parallel like that. Again, like a runway. You're not landing a plane, so you don't need to do that. So what works a lot better is if you actually put, one light here, one light here, one light here, one light here. Then, as opposed to just having this big oval of light in the middle and then another big oval light in this middle, what you're doing is you're just continuing that light from here. It lights up this section. This one's over here. It lights up this section. This one's over here. It lights up this section, and then so on and so on. So usually you can get away with a lot fewer lights that way too. So that's just something to think about with path lights before you just start ordering a whole bunch of lights. Again, we can help you with that, but I want to give you guys kind of the tools and the steps that you can do that. And then, like I said, uplights. The one tip I will give people about this is, I mean, everybody's worried about the degree, the spread, all this kind of stuff. Again, 90% of the time, it's not really going to matter that much unless you're dealing with like really high trees or really small kind of plants where you need something not as bright but wider, or a really tall tree where you need something that's just a lot brighter and you really need to get that light up there. The one thing I will say about uplights is, what I find, and you'll see this as I go through the consultation, is most people will they'll install them far back from an object and shine it at it, and 9 out of 10 times you're way better having it closer but pointed more upright. It's going to give it a much nicer balanced, kind of like a wash lighting effect, as opposed to, again, creating those hot spots. So there's all kinds of other lights, and if you need help with that, we can help you. But 90% to 95% of your project is going to be done with uplights. and path and garden light. So I'll kind of leave that there. That's the first thing on any project you're going to kind of have to determine, and that comes in the design phase. And usually it's easier to do that once the plants are in, once you kind of have your landscape set out, as opposed to what even I find a lot of landscapers do is they'll draw out this big comprehensive plan or whatever and say, okay, the tree here, the tree here, tree here, we need a light here, a light here, a light here. It's really tough to determine that. Lighting is one of those things, like seeing is believing. Anytime somebody sends me a landscape plan, I kind of just tell them, you know what, just hold off, come back when you have everything planted, and then we'll kind of look at things again. I'll tell you what you actually, should be putting where. Again, if it's lighter on your pocketbook, then I mean that's a good thing, right? So you've got your lights determined. I mean, the next thing you've got to focus on is you've got to figure out, okay, what size transformer you need. A transformer, I mean, that's what's going to power your system. If you don't know what kind of transformer to use, or you don't have a transformer, you can't light your system. Big question I have is, do I have to hardwire it? And the answer is no. I mean, all these transformers will just plug right into any exterior outlet that's out there. So you don't need an electrician. In some cases, if your transformer can't be located in a good spot and you're gonna have to run wire all the way around the house to get your lights wired up, then it's usually not that expensive to go get an electrician to just put an outlet, maybe somewhere that's more convenient. Sometimes get an electrician to come do that, maybe it costs you $100, $200 if it's a simple enough spot, as opposed to all the extra labor and time and wire it's going to take to run something all the way around. I don't know. In my experience, I would much rather just go have a more convenient outlet put in somewhere. But sorry, this is like the second or third attempt at this live stream today. So I'm losing some voice. So I just need to have a quick swig of homemade beer. But what I did want to talk about transformers is there's only two things, there's a few things you need to worry about, but it's not as complicated as you think. One, you want to try as much as possible to stay away from like those, the plastic transformers that you'll find at Home Depot and that kind of stuff, because they degrade in the sun. They don't handle the heat very well. So there's just more likelihood that they're probably going to die a lot sooner and cause you more issues. You almost always want to try and go with more of a stainless steel type transformer. Again, it's going to weather better. It's going to handle the heat better. It's just going to do an overall better job. And it has a lot more functionality, because now when you're looking at a transformer, another thing to consider is, I'll get into size and all that in a second, but you want to consider the timer and stuff. Typically, you should be able to get a timer that just has like some kind of photocell and timer combo. But a lot of times I get asked, oh, you know what? I want to make it a smart timer. I want to be able to control it from my phone. Well, you can turn virtually any transformer out there into a smart transformer, because, for example, this one here, let's see here. It's got a simple on-off switch. If you just leave it in the on position, and most transformers will have that, whether it's a button or something, you just leave it in the on position, and then you can control it with a Wi-Fi timer, which I'll show you. If you don't have an on-off switch and it has some kind of photocell, you can just cover that up with electrical tape, and then that basically makes the transformer on all the time. And then all you need to do is, and it doesn't matter what you like we use something. We use just a basic outdoor Wi-Fi timer like this, that now your transformer just plugs into here. This plugs into the wall, and then you run it from your phone or whatever app you do. If this is not the timer that you want, and you want to make something else Wi-Fi, if you have a Ring system, if you have a Smart 4 or Control 4 or Control U or Ring, or it doesn't matter what it is, they usually make some kind of outdoor plug-in switch like this, or you can have one installed, and then you can run it from whatever system that you're most accustomed to. And you can virtually turn any landscape lighting system into a smart system. You just have to make sure that it's in the on position, and then you run everything from there. So really inexpensive way to go and do that. Now, when you're sizing your transformer, it's not as complicated as most people think. It's so simple. Guys, all you have to do is like for example, and this is the most common transformers you're going to find. You're going to find a 150 watt. You're going to find a 300 watt. I'm going to tell you, if you're using LED lights and you're never going to use a 600, you're never going to use a 900 watt transformer. They almost don't even sell those anymore. The only reason they do is because there's still some old school boys who still think halogen is the way to go. And then in that case, yeah, you might need one of those giant transformers, but you don't need that anymore. So all you have to do to figure out the transformer is you just go add up the wattage of your light. So say, for example, you've got, let's say you've got 20 of these lights and they're all 5 watt lights. These range from 3 to 5 to 7 watts. But say, just to keep the math simple, so you got 20 of them that are 5 watts each. Well, 20 times 5 is 100. So you need at least a transformer that's 100 watts or more. But what is most important is you always want to size it a little bit bigger, because there's going to be some inefficiencies and some different things like that. Even a 5 watt bulb actually uses slightly more than 5 watts. The more efficient the bulb is, the closer it's going to be to those 5 watts. That's why, I always get this is like, they'll go to Amazon and say, well, I found this bulb here and it's a fraction of the price. It's a third of the cost of what you guys use. Well, the reason is it's not a 3 watt bulb. I've seen 3 watt bulbs that use up to 9 watts, and not a big deal unless your transformer is not super oversized, because then all of a sudden you run into all kinds of issues. So all you want to make sure is, if you're using something good, you just want to size your transformer 20 to 30% larger than what you need. So if you need 100 watts, you want to size that transformer to at least 120 to 130 watts or more. Again, because these are LED systems, they're not halogen systems, you don't have to worry about oversizing your transformer. If you're not sure and you think you might be expanding or anything later, well, then just use a bigger transformer. Again, it's not going to affect it if you're using LED lights. A lot of the even the literature and stuff you'll find about transformers and lights and all that kind of stuff still refers to halogen systems, which I'll explain a little bit more here in the next step, where it's really not that big of a deal. The other reason transformers like this are good is because they have these multi-taps. So why this is important is, again, if you see like an old school 600 watt transformer, it's got like an 11, a 12, a 13, a 14, a 15. The reason for that is, when you used to have halogen systems, they would have bulbs in them. They would have halogen bulbs, and these halogen bulbs would only operate in a certain window. They would usually only operate between like 11 and 12 volts, which means if you were getting more than 12 volts at that light, it was going to burn out like that. If you were getting less, it just wasn't going to be that bright. With LED, and again, this is why it's so important to get good, not cheap shit. You want to get good stuff, because most of these are designed to operate between 10 and 15 volts. And I've seen even in some cases where they'll still operate at maximum efficiency at 8 and 9 volts. So why is that important? Is voltage drop. That's a question you will see on old videos all the time about voltage drop. Is like, oh, you really got to measure this. And it's usually old school boys that are still talking about halogen. I'm going to show you a simple chart that tells you why you don't need to worry about voltage drop a whole lot, especially if you're using a transformer like this that has the multiple taps in it. And I'm going to pull up a quick, I'm going to try and do this without cutting anything off. I didn't have good luck last time. But let's just see. I'm going to pull up a voltage drop chart. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to mention one more thing while I'm on this page. The other thing you want to make sure is you're always using 12-2 wire. There's going to be very rare circumstances. In all the years that I've been doing this for the last 10 years, there's only one case where I had to use some 10 gauge wire, and it wasn't for the whole system. It was just because they had like a driveway that was like, whatever it was, 1,000 feet long. So we ran 10 gauge up until we got to those lights, and then we did 12-2 wire. But the reason you want to use 12-2 for, like I said, 90%, not even 99% of the jobs, is because it's going to handle most of the loads that you have, you're not going to run into issues. It fits better with most of the waterproof connectors, which I'll talk about in a second. And by going with smaller wire, you're not saving a lot of money. And what I see happen more often than not when doing that is, again, a lot of times that smaller wire doesn't fit properly in a lot of these wireproof connectors. And the other reason is if you ever want to expand, well, all of a sudden you've limited your system before you even start. And if your landscape lighting is anything like your actual landscape, where it evolves and it changes all the time, you're going to plant trees, you're going to take stuff out. You want to have that flexibility to do that. Again, that's why a bigger transformer makes sense. But the reason I brought that up is because now if I go back to, let's see if I can do this. If we go back to using the 12-2 wire, we're going to try and pull up this chart. Fingers crossed. Hey, there we go. Okay, I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit here. So this is a 12 gauge voltage drop chart. Now, this was used a lot more for halogen fixtures. Red is bad, white is good. Again, that was because you needed to operate in that window, that 10 to 12 volt window, and that was it. So that's what the white is telling you. But what I'm telling you is with LED, you don't have to, because now you have that 10 to 15, in some cases 9 to 15 volt range. To flip this camera around because I'm like backwards here. But anyway, what this chart is telling you is this is telling you how many watts. So on the left side here is the wattage of lights. So say we go back to that scenario where we have 100 watts, which at 5 watts each, that's 20 lights, okay? So we have 100 watts. And then this is telling me how much voltage I'm going to lose when I run it out this length. So if I run out 250 feet of 12-2 cable at 100 watts, I'm going to lose 5.56 volts. So what that's telling me is if I have a transformer that has a 15 volt tap, if I run 100 watts on 250 feet of line, which I'm telling you most of you are not going to do on one line, because you're probably going to break it off. Again, multiple taps, you can have 50 watts on one line, 50 watts on another. But if you do this, 5.56 volts voltage drop is going to bring you down to like 9.5 volts. That's still enough to run that last light on that line at almost near maximum efficiency. So a general rule of thumb that I tell people is up to 100 watts of lights on 12-2 cable, up to 250 feet out with a transformer that has a 15 volt tap, and you're safe. If you're worried, then just split it up. You've got multiple taps. So have another line that comes out of that 15 volt tap and put some of the lights on that and just lower it. Because all of a sudden now, if you only have, let's say you only have 60 watts, well, now before you even get to that threshold, I mean, you can run it out well over 300 feet. That's why I say it's not even an issue. So I get all these engineers and stuff will come on and they'll, they'll say, oh yeah, but you can just read it with a multimeter and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I know. But half the time I forget my multimeter and I don't need to. I've never used a multimeter on an install because it doesn't matter, guys. When you're using LED, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you stick to this simple rule, which I've never had a scenario yet where I've had to. There's been one project that I've done was out on Salt Spring Island, on Vancouver Island, which we had multiple lights. This was like I want to say it was like a 20-acre property right on the ocean. Giant redwoods. We're using big lights, super spaced out. So I got a transformer at the house that's handling a bunch of lights. I got a transformer at a guest house that's handling a bunch of lights. And I got this long run. And I was on Vancouver Island and I didn't have all my tools. I didn't have my multimeter and all this kind of stuff. So I was hooking up all these lights and I'm getting down. I'm like, oh geez, I'm 300 feet. I'm pretty close to that 100 watts of lights. And I was getting really nervous. And like, when I turned that system on, I mean, ooh, is this going to work? And sure enough, it does. Like, I think this is, I think you can push this to the boundaries and still be pretty safe. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention that with transformers. I know that was a lot, but it's one of the questions I get all the time. And, same thing, if you go to our sorry, I did that wrong here. I gotta switch back. I'll get this, guys. Just give me some time here. There we go. Yeah, so if you go back to our do-it-yourself videos, I mean, this is actually a really good section if you haven't had a chance yet. But one, it's got like a full video that walks you through how to install all the lights. But then if you have questions on how to wire it, along with voltage drop transformers, this video will handle that. If you're just watching because you don't need a new system, but you have some troubleshooting issues that you need to check out, this is a really good video. It kind of walks you through the beauty of especially LED landscape lighting. There's really only so many things that can go wrong. This pretty much covers it. And this is the other reason, guys, why, I think this is, I'm hoping this becomes a good series, because now you can send me your questions and I can actually walk you through it, and we'll be able to do live videos too. We're up in Northern Alberta, Canada. So, I mean, the ground is frozen solid right now, so I can't do anything outside. But very soon we're going to be able to start doing that. So we can actually do interactive videos where we're showing you some of that. However, I don't think there's much troubleshooting I can do other than this video, waterproof connectors, that kind of stuff. And then we got a full guide too that links to pretty much every step of installing landscape lights too. So I just wanted to show you guys that. We've covered, figuring out what kind of lights you have to use. And again, like I said, you don't have to worry about that if you're just buying like a kit like this. Everything that you need is already in it. But if you want to go do it on your own, or you're getting your lights somewhere else or whatever, this will kind of, tell you. Get your lights, figure out your transformer, and then figure out roughly how much wire you're going to need. Sometimes you might only need 250 feet. Sometimes you might need 500. It just depends on the project. You might have to walk that out a little bit. I will tell you this as a good tip, a general rule of thumb, is you're probably going to need more wire than you think. So you always want to make sure you have a little extra, because that's the other thing too, is when you get to actually installing it and stuff too, you want to make sure that you're leaving, extra wire. And you'll see that in a lot of our do-it-yourself videos, but you want to leave extra wire because it's going to give you more play, more room to kind of move things around and that kind of stuff. So lights, transformer, wire, timers if you need them. I mean, we already talked about some options. And the next is just like waterproof connectors. So guys, there's a million kinds of waterproof connectors out there. Some are good, some are bad. These are not the only other good ones. There's lots of other good ones as well. They're just maybe a little bit more time consuming. So for the DIY guy, that's why we stick to some of these. It doesn't have to be these, but there's a couple things that I don't care what you use, they all should have in common. One, they should be silicone filled in some way or the other. These are all silicone filled. 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 Why? Because that's going to keep the water out. If water gets in, it's going to corrode it, and you're going to end up having to replace those connections. I don't just sell lights online, guys. I do repairs and stuff too. That's one of the biggest things is when a fixture gets corroded. So you got to make sure that it has some kind of gel-like form in it. And actually, you know what? If you give me a quick sec here, I just want to pull up. Let's say wire, stay away from these kinds of connections, wire piercing, connectors, landscape lighting. Anything that looks and works like this, and there's all kinds of different versions of it. But for the most part, they're cheaper, they're quick to use, but flawed with flaws. See if I can pull that up. See, I had a way better camera. I mean, it stopped working earlier, which was frustrating. I didn't look as weathered. But anyway. And I picked the wrong. There we go. So something like this is kind of what you want to avoid. They're super easy to install and they're quick. But what happens is you have this little device here that pierces into that 12-2 wire, and then this kind of screws down. And then this kind of screws down on the wire. So there's two problems with that. Is one, I mean, anytime you're piercing into the wire and it doesn't have any silicone, what do you think is going to happen? Water is eventually going to get in there and it's going to corrode this. and that connection is not going to work anymore. The other problem with these is you can see here that you don't have any extra wires. So what people do when they put these, and this is where my last video cut out, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed. But when it's straight like this, if you have to go repair that, there's no extra wire or anything. You can't do anything. So what happens is you got to cut back here, and you got to cut back here, and you got to put a whole new section in, which means now instead of just eliminating the one bad connection, you're adding two more possibilities for a flawed connection. Whereas if you're using anything where you actually have to cut the wire and insert it into any kind of gel filled thing, well, you're usually going to leave some extra wire here so that if you ever have to go make a repair later, you've got some extra wire that you can play with. Guys, it happens all the time. When I show up, those connections are no longer working. And now, instead of just replacing one connection, I got to replace two to be able to extend that. I hope that makes sense, but stay away from anything that pierces the wire. Have is you need to have connections that have, again, these properties. They're waterproof, so they have some gel in them, and two, they have some kind of mechanical pull apart mechanism. So for example, these ones, this yellow tab opens up, and then you put the wires in, and then it snaps down on them to help prevent it from pulling apart. These ones, same thing. Wire goes in, snaps down, and it closes it. These ones, same thing. The wire goes into these morettes, which actually hold it pretty good too, but then you stick it up into these tubes that's full of gel, and then this snaps down, keeps the wire from pulling apart. These are the only ones that don't really have that. They are gel filled. You put the wires, you twist it on. It does a pretty good job of holding them, but there's still a chance they can get pulled apart. So what I usually do with these, and I would recommend it with any of them, these fixtures, is you actually put like an extra zip tie or electrical tape or something around it. And the way I usually do that is, say I have my, say this is my connection. I'm actually going to take the wire. This is white, so you might not be able. Do I have another? Here, one sec. Next time I'll use real wire. But say you have your connection right here, okay? What I usually like to do is I usually like to take the wire and then I'll wrap it again like this. So it's kind of like a double loop, and then I'll tape this, or I'll zip tie it. I'm not taping it to keep more water out, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't care how hard you pull on that now, because even with some of these that have those mechanisms, there's still a chance. It's not as likely as if you're using something like this, but there's still a chance. Or if you double wrap it like that, zip tie or tape, you're really eliminating the chance that that wire is going to get pulled out. And that's super important because that causes lots of issues. So yeah, so again, lights, transformer, wire, waterproof connectors, that's it. There's nothing else you need, guys. It's that simple. I'll show you a couple little tools that will help make the job a little bit easier. I'll just go, actually, you know what? I think we probably have, actually, no, you know what? I'm just going to go show you a couple of the different tools that I find are super, super helpful to have to get started. The one thing that I obviously, you know, just some wire cutters like this, some wire strippers, they don't have to be fancy. It's 12-2 wire, so it's, you know, it's easy to get something cheap. You're not having to cut through anything hard. You don't need anything expensive. So this is a great tool. A rubber mallet. I always like to get a rubber mallet and then like one of these little small garden shovels. These are great for just kind of digging the fixtures in before you have to make anything permanent. They're easy to use. They don't take up a lot of space. I mean, I keep one in my toolbox. So that's super handy. I always have a rubber mallet because that's one of the things too. You want to make sure that you can really hammer that stake in and make it nice and sturdy. So those are three tools you need. I don't know, in my opinion, you can't do it without it. I don't know if you're going to bite the wire off with your teeth, but you need those three things. When it comes to burying the wire, and same thing, guys, like I said, I mean, you can go to our do-it-yourself videos and actually show you how to do it with like cut in the wire with a flat spade shovel. You don't need a trencher or anything like that, but just a flat spade shovel. Just go there, watch the video. I'll do it another time. But yeah, a flat spade shovel is another really easy tool to get that wire buried quite easily. And then I just want to share these I think are also super important, super handy to have. Is if you're new to lighting, even if you think you know what lights are going to go where, but you haven't quite decided 100% yet, you can go get these battery packs. Now, this is something we used to offer as kind of like we used to call it our try it before you buy it, where you would get like a battery pack and a light. And then all this takes is 8 AA batteries. You hook these up to the two ends of the wire on your light fixture, and then you can actually go and start putting that in the ground and seeing how it looks on your property. Now, we don't offer that anymore because too many people just took advantage of it, but you can still go buy one fixture and one of these and go test it out, so that even if you think you know, okay, I need this or this, or what I get more often than not is the husband will come and say, well, I got to make sure my wife likes it. I get it. If she doesn't like it, you're sleeping on the couch. But if she likes the look of it, and I'll promise you, that's the one thing about landscape lighting. It's kind of that seeing is believing thing. So if you can go see how a light looks before you actually go and purchase 20, 30 lights or whatever it is, it just makes it that easier. This is a really good tool for that. I recommend if you're a contractor or anything, you're watching this, or you're getting into lighting, just go buy yourself a half dozen of these, a half dozen lights, and you use them as demo lights that you can actually go and leave with people for a night. You're not going to get more than 8 hours out of one of these packs, but it's a really good way to kind of go test out those lights and see how it's going to go look. And in fact, we used to do, before they kind of had these available or whenever they run out, you can also just use a 9-volt battery. So like the square ones, and you just hold the two ends of the wire from the light fixture to the terminals on that. And if it's a good light, it should light that up. You have to be careful because it can get a little hot on your thumbs or your fingers or whatever sometimes, but that's another quick, easy way of doing that. And I'll show you guys that sometime. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, like, a lot of times you guys will mention, I need to go under a sidewalk or something. This is a really good tool for that. Basically all it is just a long, flexible drill bit that fits on any standard drill. And then all you have to go do is you just kind of dig back in the yard a little bit, just so you can kind of get the drill underneath, and then you just drill underneath the sidewalk. This is a 3/4 inch bit. So it's more than enough to slide the wire through. You can try and sleeve it if you want. You don't have to. If you can't get deep enough, then it might be good to throw a conduit or something underneath. But if you can, get pretty deep, and it's not like an unsettling, because it's just a small hole, guys. But this is a really good tool for getting underneath sidewalks. But those are kind of the main things. I mean, there's not a whole lot more other than that that you need. Like I said, Wi-Fi timers. It doesn't have to be this one. It can be any one, but you can virtually make any landscape lighting transformer a smart timer, a smart transformer. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that. And now what I kind of want to do is actually, I'm going to go back here. I want to show you guys a little bit of, let me just see how I'm going to do this. Yeah, okay. I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a landscape lighting consult. This is kind of one that I just recently did, but it'll give you a good idea of what you guys can expect if that's something that you guys want to take advantage of, and how to go and do that. So let me just get into there we go. Okay. So I'm going to kind of show you what I do when I get a landscape lighting consult. It's usually like this: is somebody will take a few pictures, and I'm just trying to make that a little better. Okay. So the only thing I'll say is when you do this, again, you can just email them to me directly, cal@lightingdoctor.ca, or you can go to our contact page on our website, and we'll kind of help you through that process. But the one thing when you're taking pictures is again, you want to consider that viewing angle. So this is a great picture because this is kind of the viewing angle that I'm going to see as I'm walking up these stairs. So this is going to help me determine where I want to put those lights. Again, this is a good viewing angle because I want to see how my house is going to look from the street side. So this is going to this is going to give me a good angle of how that's going to look where I put those lights. Yeah, and this is a good angle. So, you know, if you can take a picture of like head on, it helps because then I can kind of space out where everything is. But because there's two pictures here, it kind of gives me a good indication of what to do. So what I would do in something like this is, again, I'm going to talk about pretty much, like I said, up lights and path and garden lights. And one of the things I want to do in an area like this, I mean, I want to get some light in here. It's probably nothing's growing high enough that I'm going to have any kind of uplight or anything like that. So what I would probably do in something like this. Oh, I don't have my edit. I don't have my edit feature here. I wonder if I can do this. I might have to show the console in a different type of video, but you know, when I do a console video, I actually will draw it out for you. I can't right now with the stream going on, so I'll have to figure out a way to do that. But basically what I would do on a home like this is, here I would probably have a path and garden light in here, and I would have a path and garden light in here for two reasons. Is one, anytime you kind of have these lower growing kind of smaller plants and stuff, it's really nice to have a light in there because it really highlights them. And especially if they're kind of that lighter yellow color, lighter colors reflect light more. So it really makes them stand out. Plus, the other thing I'm going to do is with that, I'm actually going to be casting a little bit of light down on kind of the retaining wall below, as well as some on the back here. So by doing that on both sides, it's really going to make this entryway to the stairway light up. Those lights it'll be close. They might not quite be high enough to cast a lot of light onto these stairs, but it probably will add some. And because you have them on both sides, it's going to do a nice job of lighting up that stair area. Then what I want to do in the front here, and here's an example of what I talked about with path and garden lights, is like you don't need this many. I get it. These are solar lights, so you know, there's more of them than you need because they're not that bright. The other thing that happens with these is you actually see the light source here, which is not something you want to do, because that's how you make it more of a, it's you make it more of a runway style, and you're not trying to land a plane, so you don't need that. So you want to have a light that you don't see that light source. And in an area like this, you can definitely spread them out a little bit more. Another tip with path and garden lighting is you typically don't want them right against the sidewalk. You want to kind of back in the beds a little bit. What that does is one, if you have like smaller plants growing in there, it kind of shines through them a little bit, and it casts shadows on that walkway, which is nice. But two, they're not as prone to getting, you know, kicked over by your friends that had too much to drink, or if you live in an area where you get tons of snow, then you don't have to worry about, you know, hitting them with a shovel or snowblower or whatever it is. But as I'm looking at the front of this house, I am going to have some here, but I always like to focus on the house a little bbit first. Now, whenever I have kind of this, you know, consistent window and shutter pattern, I want to probably try and get some uplights on this here. And how I would typically do this is I'm just going to use a standard uplight. And yeah, I wish I could draw it out for you. I usually do when we do the consults. Yeah. Okay. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a standard uplight with that 3-watt bulb, and I'm going to use that back on the house here to try and create a bit of a consistent pattern where the windows are. So I'm going to have one of those uplights. I'd probably have one at the base of this window, and like I said earlier, I don't have it back shining in the window. I have it closer. I have it, you know, 12 to 18 inches back, and it's going to be shining a lot more upright. So it's just kind of grazing those windows. So I would probably have one here. I would probably have one here. I'm going to do the same under these windows because the spread on that too is going to get these shutters, which is going to make those stand out. Plus the white window frames is really going to stand out. So you kind of have those. I would do the same thing over here. Actually, I'm going to change this up a little bit. So I'm going to have those two there, and I'm going to have the two on these windows over here as well, because I want to have that consistency. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm probably going to use a slightly brighter light. So I'm going to use like a 5-watt bulb, and I'm going to use a 5-watt bulb. Hopefully I have just enough room to get those behind these shrubs, but Yeah, behind the shrubs, but still far enough out so that light gets past this area. And then I'm going to have them shining up so that it's getting the second story here. And I'm going to do that with both lights over here. And then they're going to really do a nice job of backlighting the house. And then what I want to do is I want to kind of create a little bit of consistency in the front with, again, a landscape is going to be very symmetrical to the landscape lighting. Here you've got, some taller trees that are kind of in the front. This is where I would probably have an uplight on each one of these guys that kind of highlights that. Again, shining more upright than at it, but that would create a nice balance. And then to kind of balance out my backlighting, I've got kind of forefront lighting on these trees. This is where in front of this guy, I'm probably going to use that same uplight, but with more of a wash light. So that 2 watt, it's not as bright, it's a wider angle. And I'm going to highlight the front of this guy. I'm probably going to have one here that's going to highlight these front bushes. I'm going to do the same thing over here that's going to highlight these front bushes. And then you have kind of a similar plant over here where I'm going to highlight that with that same wash light. And then you have that real consistency where you have your uplights in the background, the brighter ones here, the 3 watt ones here, 3 watt ones here. Then you have, these trees lit up with the 3 watt ones in front. And then you kind of have your wash lights that are handling these guys. And then what I want to do is over on this side, I just want to have a few path and garden lights. I wish there was a way that I could kind of draw this out for you guys, but again, I'll figure that out. But I'm going to try and just space those path and garden lights now. So like I said, I have one here. I'll probably throw one kind of somewhere here. And I've got my wash light here that's going to give me a little reflective light that's going to light this area. I'll probably have another path and garden light here. And then I'm going to have that wash light over here that's going to kind of highlight this area. I'll probably have another path and garden light over here, and then I'll probably have one more on the corner. So you see what I mean by not having to overdo it with path and garden lights? Because now I can get away with 4 path and garden lights here as opposed to 8 to 10 of them. And if I look at this angle, we've kind of already touched on that already, where I've got my uplights on these trees. I've kind of got my my brighter uplights highlighting the back of the house here, and then I've got my wash lights again, kind of on these smaller shrubs. Now, again, that might seem like a lot of lights, but you could easily fit all of that on a basic 150 watt transformer. You'd have no issues doing that. And that would be the gist of it. So, like I said, you've got your lights. You've got about 4 plus 2. 6 path and garden lights. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 wash lights. You've got of your standard uplights, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 on those trees, and then you have another 4 on those back windows. So you got 4 of those, and then you've got 4 5 watt bulbs. You've got your lights, 150 watt transformer. Probably only need a single roll of 250 feet of wire, and then you need your waterproof connectors. You need 2 for every fixture. Again, go check out the videos. If you still have questions about this stuff, guys, literally we'll all be talking in this video. It'll show you exactly how to do it, or you can go and you can actually download, like I said, you can download the full guide here that has the links to those videos. Before I kind of wrap things up, I just want to go double check that we didn't have any more questions. I think that, one question, but we've kind of already covered that, so I don't think we really need to talk about that too much. Just a little bit about wash lights and path lights, but I think I've kind of covered that to death. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this live stream. If you have a project that you want us to have a look at on the live stream, I'm going to figure out how to draw things out for you so it's a little bit better. But I'm happy to do that. Send that in. Either just email me, tell me you want us to touch it on a live stream. You can go to our contact page. You can send us a quick message there. We'll do that. Same thing. Any questions that you guys have, you can send them to our contact page. You can email me, cal@lightingdoctor.ca. You can leave a comment, because chances are you guys aren't watching this live. It's Wednesday afternoon. You guys are probably working. I just happen to have an office day on Wednesdays. But you can leave comments. And we'll try and answer those, and we'll keep doing it on the live streams. And the more people that start tuning in, hopefully we'll have some live questions. We can kind of get into some stuff. And as the snow melts, we'll be able to go out in the field and actually show you some more of that. But I'm serious, guys. Everything that you guys need to know about landscape lighting, the design is the trickiest part. Everything else is going to be covered in a lot of these videos. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned. We're going to keep doing this. And yeah, we'll see you guys all in the next stream.